Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle from We Need Diverse Books, and I'm here with Stephan Lee, the author of K-Pop Revolution.
Hi, Danielle. I'm so excited to be talking to you, especially for We Need Diverse Books because it's all in the name. We really do.
We really do have it right here. So I keep
Oh,
looking to the side at
yay.
it. I tried to
Yay.
kind of match the cover with my sweater, but
Oh, yeah. The
the
puffiness. Yeah.
puffiness. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and the
Oh,
ending
thank
made me
you.
tear up a lot. So
Oh,
thank you for that.
oh,
But I loved
good.
it. I loved it so much.
Oh, thank
So
you.
can you just tell us like a little bit about the plot and
Yeah.
yeah, where it picks up from K-pop Confidential, the first book?
Yes. So I wrote the book so you don't strictly have to read the first book to enjoy the second book. But you definitely should read the first book, K-Pop Confidential, because it ends on kind of a cliffhanger,
Oh yes.
which was a bit of a risk on my part because I didn't have my sequel deal in place by that point.
Really?
So I was like, oh gosh, like maybe there's going to be a world in which like this has to be the end and will be, people be mad at me. But I was still I had a lot of hope that I would get a sequel deal. So like if I really didn't think I was going to get one, I wouldn't have ended the first book that way, but it was still a risk. But I did get the sequel deal. So it kind of the sequel picks up right when the first book leaves off. And so the first book is all about the K-pop trainee life, which I don't know if a ton of people know about, especially outside of K-pop fandom, but like it's incredibly intense. And there's the first time you see a K-pop idol group like fully formed, it's usually the culmination of like maybe a decade of work, of nonstop like heartache and like trying for something that has very little chance of succeeding, but putting everything into it. So that's what the first book is about. But the second is like, when you actually get chosen, which is actually a lot scarier than not getting chosen in a way. So Candace, there's a lot of drama, but like she ends up finding a way to debut because that was very much in question after the first book. And her company, SAY Entertainment, is completely revamped. They have a new female CEO who just seems like the perfect fit for what she wants to do, which is to move forward in K-pop with a more like, empowered way, instead of kind of being told what to do all the time. But nothing is as it seems, and she and her group go through a lot of drama, and they have to fight online haters, fans, antis. But then even like some of the stuff at the company still seems shady, but it's very hard for them to prove it. So it's a romance, it's another coming of age, but there's also a bit of like corporate intrigue in this one. So yeah, there's a lot going on.
There was so much going on. I was just on the edge of my seat, like on every chapter. I was just like, I need to read the next chapter, I need to read the
Oh
next.
my God, that's so
Oh,
great.
I was just like so like excited, but also stressed out, like for all of the characters. But I know that the journey to get to this book was kind of an interesting one for you.
Yeah.
I read on an Instagram post that you
Mhm.
had a finished draft and then
Mhm.
you kind of scrapped it and rewrote
Yeah.
it in a matter of weeks, like from scratch.
Yeah.
So, can you explain that to us? Like, what were the emotions? Like, what was going on there? And how did you decide that this draft was was it?
Yeah. So I'm gonna be really corny for a second. And like I swear when authors talk about like, oh, my character took on a life of her own and like ended up kind of telling me her story, but like in a way it did kind of happen that way because so I wrote this very I believe empowered character in Candace Park for K-pop Confidential, and then the book came out, and like all the run up to it was so stressful because in addition to everything else that goes into putting out your first book, which is a very vulnerable place to be. It was during the pandemic. And so nothing about the release of my first ever book, which is something I've dreamed of forever, was going to be exactly what I thought it would be. And then in the months running up to it, just like a lot of things that I thought would happen just didn't with the book, just because the world was just like in chaos, and much more important things were going on. And then I just felt kind of like alone in it and very like vulnerable, because when you're the first few months before your book comes out is very scary, because there's nothing you can do to change it. But then like you're hearing things from like media or social media of people who've read it, and like everything that's said means so much because so few people have read it. So like by and large, everything was really positive, but I was just like I was just still in a very negative space in terms of like, oh my God, like what if something happens? Because I've just seen other authors kind of like get their books like kind of go off the rails right before it comes out. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I just felt very vulnerable for whatever reason. And yeah, and like I did get some flack about like, oh, he wrote a female character, but he doesn't seem to identify as female. But like, I'm also just like, how do you know how I kind of identify? um but then like I just kind of felt like so anxious and like very, very, very like kind of, I don't know, down on myself, even though the book was, you know, a success and everything. I just it just felt so different than what I thought. And I kind of, when it came to writing the second book, I was so just in a different space, because when writing the first one, I was just like, oh, hopes of all my dreams. Like, I'm just going to write the book I want to write. But now I just kind of felt loaded by like, oh, if I do this, will people react one way? Or if I make this decision, will this bookstore not carry the book? You know, like things like that. I was like overly invested in what people might be saying, or just like the audience, um, or kind of the result. And even when writing the book, I was just kind of like writing the second book, I was just kind of like, my hands were kind of tied by that, because if you're trying to like please everybody, you're not really going to write an authentic story. So I just wrote, I spent forever. I went way past my deadline, just like kind of in isolation, writing this draft that didn't feel real. It just hit all the notes of like a rookie year, but it didn't have the emotional, like kind of bravery that Candace would normally have. And my editor was just like, this is good. It's really fun. We can kind of put out this version, but like, it doesn't really seem like Candace really. And it's because I was kind of afraid, because like, you know, like I I got like 99% positive responses for the first book, but like 5% would just be like, oh, Candace is like kind of annoying, or like, you know, she talks too much, she's entitled and all that stuff. And like I actually took that personally to myself, even though I'm not really that similar to her. So but then like I really just thought about it, and like after a long time, and also just kind of like, this was around when a lot of, you know, the anti-AAPI hate started coming up. And I kind of felt that very personally, because I've had my own experiences with it. But something about it, even though that was so hard, it kind of loosened me up. And I was just like, you know what, like, um, nothing really bad is going to happen. Even if like the worst possible thing happened with the book, like, you know, people hate it, and then like, for whatever reason, I would have to cancel it before it comes out. Even though there was no reason for that to happen, I was like, it's not going to kill me. It's not going to make me a bad person. So I just kind of freed myself. And I was so far over deadline, like months over deadline. It was a big situation. And my editor was just like, this book needs to come out at this time no matter what. So you better finish it. So I was like, I can't keep that first draft, even though she was fine with it. I was just like, no, I have to start over. So I actually started the whole thing over and wrote the whole thing in 3 weeks. And it was a completely different book, but it just flowed. It just came out, and I was just like free. It felt so good, because like, I kind of feel like the second book, the emotional arc, by the way, this is the longest answer ever, but the emotional arc for Candace, it really is just like kind of digging herself out of being too afraid to say anything. Um, and I really put myself in there. And the stakes for being a K-pop star are way bigger, and the audience is way huger, but like emotionally, it felt very similar. So yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, they say that the best stories that we write are the ones that are the most personal. So it sounds like
Yeah.
you really just made this one a little more personal to you, and it had a good result.
Yeah,
So I
I
love
hope
that.
so.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned yeah, that Candace was kind of dealing with, fame on this really big scale.
Hmm.
And just kind of how like she reacted to that was very interesting to me. I just wanted to know, like,
Hmm.
being a public figure, have you ever felt like she did? Like I remember this moment in the book, like they're filming a reality show and
Hmm.
she's like, wait, who am I right now? She
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
takes a moment. So I was just wondering if you've had that moment, like, wait, who am I? Or have you felt like you had to change assets of yourself to like please the public, I guess?
No, totally. And I think this is like very much the case with like social media. I'm friends off of social media with a lot of YA authors, and like, just in person, we can all be kind of human and have a lot of flaws and make jokes and all that stuff. But then like social media is kind of scary, and like you just have to present like the perfect version, or like even not the perfect version, but just like the version that everyone else is. So that can honestly like kind of sweep you up, and you can kind of like start to think that that's your real self. um, and yeah, and like it's also a healthy reminder that like one person on social media might have a lot of impact on what you think of your project if you let it. Because like you don't get reactions from every person who reads something, and then like it's so true, it's so human nature. When you read a good comment, you're like, oh yay, but then you kind of just move on. But then if you read a bad one, then like it sticks with you forever, and you're just like, everyone thinks this of me, like, and now everyone else who reads this. So when my first book was coming out, a month before it came out, I got subtweeted by these two white um, K-pop journalists, and they were just like, "There is a book about K-pop. It's written by a cis man, and it has a female character, main character, and like." This one journalist like pointed out three words from an excerpt that were completely like just benign, but she just like made it seem like those three words meant that it was like, a highly problematic book. But then like 300 people, without knowing the book, the title, or my name or anything, just like piled on and like put gifs of like flaming burning books and like how, and like just said things like, oh my god, like publishing should never put books out like this, I want to squeeze my eyes out or whatever. And then like another big K-pop journalist actually retweeted everything and got her followers to kind of agree. But like this was all like, not, I wasn't tagged, but I was like shown it by a friend. And that actually made me, for that last month, for whatever like interviews I had coming up, I was just like, oh no, like everyone's going to think this of my book, even though that wasn't my intention. I've made a mistake. And like, so I didn't like promote myself that much, because I thought that, I was like, oh no, people are going to feel this way or feel harmed by my book in some way. So I actually like kind of like shied away from interviews or like talking about my book as much as I would have. But then the book came out, literally no one thought that, once people could actually read it, aside from a couple of journalists. And then one of those journalists actually like reviewed my book in a major national publication and said it was amazing. And then she interviewed me many times, and I was just like, I know that you like called your readers to like try to, make my life miserable. But like it didn't need, but then it just kind of showed my eyes, opened my eyes, like that those are not bad people. They just like didn't think, and they were also just wanted to get like negativity because that gets likes. And it didn't even reflect how they felt. So it was just kind of like, it kind of opened my eyes to like, okay, this isn't necessarily real. And I wanted Candace to kind of feel that on a much bigger scale, because she gets a lot of hate. But then like she's occasionally reminded, like, okay, when I'm out in the world, people actually do like me, or they don't even know about the negativity. But then, people try to manipulate her to make it seem like everything people are saying online represents what people really think of you, or that really is how you are. And I think people, whether they're famous or have written books or not, like all deal with this, especially nowadays. So I definitely wanted to capture that and how damaging it can be, but only if you let it, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, social media is kind of a blessing and a curse because
Yes.
um, it really brings us closer to the people we admire, but it can also just make it really easy to tag you in that 1 star review or kind
Yeah.
of spread that
Yeah.
like hate train.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. It's also a beautiful thing, and that's what I explore in the book too, because social media is a powerful weapon in the book for good, but then it's also the most powerful weapon for bad in the book. So
Exactly.
it's definitely a double-edged sword, but like there's good and bad for sure.
Yeah, I think you represented it really well in the
Oh,
book.
thank you.
And I kind of had this moment where I was thinking though, like, do people were you afraid that some people who are not in the K-pop world would read this and K-pop Confidential and be like, no one would react like that. Like no one would actually do that. People wouldn't go that far. But
Yeah,
like, because like as a
yeah.
K-pop fan, I'm just like, this is extremely plausible. I have seen worse.
Yes. I actually think lately people will believe it because like I don't know. I feel like we've all seen situations where people get so destroyed in social media over very little things. But I think it can feel a little bit exaggerated in the K-pop world where it's just like, oh my gosh, this one star looked at her, the one idol looked at her, one of her group mates shadily on a reality show, and then like it becomes a giant scandal. I think that it may be a little bit foreign to like American readers, for instance, because like you have to do a lot more in Hollywood for there to be a real scandal. So I definitely do try to kind of explain that a little bit. Like, actually, this is like very consequential, even though it doesn't seem like drama. But I think people can relate to that now because it's just like, oh, you can never really anticipate what will get you in trouble and what won't. It can be very inconsistent. Um, and I also try to make sure to highlight that, like, you know, a lot of this stuff that seems so horrible in K-pop, K-pop is so, it's a wonderful world. Like everything that we've talked about, like everything has good and bad sides to it. And like, I definitely try both in the first and second book to be like, hey, this might sound like kind of insane to people because it's foreign, but let's also look at Hollywood and how there are things that like are legit insane, but like we're just used to it, you know? So yeah, definitely try to present both sides of everything.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so much to unpack there. um, I I really admired how, like in the book, you did touch upon those darker elements of K-pop. Like you said, there's like the light and the dark.
Mhm,
But I never felt like it dragged the book down. Like I never
mhm.
felt like I don't know if you've read Red, White, and Royal Blue, but
Yeah, I
it
love
kind of
that
felt like
book.
that, where it was like she didn't gloss over like
Yeah,
racism or the dark side of politics, but like it still had that hopeful undertone. And
yeah.
I wanted to know if that was like difficult for you to touch upon those like
Mhm.
more those darker elements while keeping that hopefulness, while keeping the fun
Yeah.
and yeah.
Well, just jumping off of the whole social media talk, I mean, I think one of the harmful parts of social media can be like either a company might try to gloss everything over and make everything look like, oh, everything's perfect. Or a lot of times, like, you know, people can kind of be like, so attack something so hard that it's just like everything about this is bad, you know? So with K-pop, it is so exciting. It's so innovative. It makes so many people happy. It brings so many people together. It has such great messages. It's so positive. But like with anything that is very influential, there is a dark side. So I wanted to highlight both because like Candace is kind of moving forward through everything by choice. Like even with the first book, some people are just like, oh my gosh, like this is the trainee um life is so hard. There's so many things that like you shouldn't really put up with. Like, why would anyone do that? But to me, it's very clear why someone would keep going because, like, you know, with kind of systems in place, like sometimes you feel like you don't have a choice. And I really wanted to, with the first book, I wanted to kind of compare the trainee life to what young people all over the world go through. You know, if sometimes feels like there aren't that many options. And each option actually seems really difficult and you have to like kind of throw everything at it. And the rules are already set, you know, and that's kind of what she's struggling through. But she kind of feels like I need to kind of check off a few boxes or get kind of far so I can do my own thing in the future, you know? And that's still how she feels in the second book, although she's gotten a lot farther. But there is this thing in the horizon that she wants, and she's just like, okay, just a few more compromises. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing because like we all do that. But there does come a time where you do have to draw a line. And that's really, really tough because it kind of feels like if you draw that line, and especially as people of color, we kind of feel like we're less entitled to draw that line, or there are more consequences to drawing a line. And she definitely feels that as a young woman. So yeah, that's what we really, what I want to explore in the second book, because it's so not easy because like she has so much pressure on the outside to be like the person who speaks up now because she has that reputation. But at the same time, there are so many more consequences than you think there are. Like people on social media are like, you should speak up, speak up, speak up. But then she's just like, but I have 5 other girls who are relying on me. I have a whole company relying on me. I have financial issues. And, you know, so yeah, it's something that she really has to struggle through.
Yeah, I totally get that. Like, not everyone can see all the sides that everyone is dealing with at the time. So it's like
Yeah.
maybe they did speak up and they got punished for it, or like maybe they're trying and like it just hasn't come to fruition yet. But yeah, it definitely is difficult as a person of color or just any sort of non-white male
Yes.
to speak up and make their like stand and
Yeah,
everything.
for sure.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about, I feel like there was a clear theme of like modernism versus like tradition,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to Korea
Yeah.
and their entertainment industry. And like the older adults kind of represented the old ways while Candace
Yeah.
represented the new ways. But there was like
Yeah.
this clash where everyone's like, how do you know like your ways are the best? Or like, how do you know
Yeah.
your ways are the best? Like, because there are like benefits and downfalls to both. But
Right.
yeah, I wanted to know why you decided to put that theme in. And yeah, just talk to us about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think generational stuff is so like important, especially right now, because I feel like there's such like a big divide between older generations and younger ones, and kind of like in the middle ones. Like I'm a millennial. Um, so I kind of feel like kind of in between. And then Candace is definitely Gen Z. And I definitely feel like more connected to the Gen Z side than like the boomer side for sure. But then like I also kind of see like kind of where they're not really talking to each other. Yeah, like I think that's like a very important struggle because like things do have to change and like young people do need to be listened to a lot more. Um, and like I feel like a lot of older generations see younger people as only one thing because I think they kind of like make stereotypes based on social media or even what they hear about social media without even seeing it. So like I wanted to kind of like explore how misunderstood people feel. And like I thought this actually happened after I finished the book, but you know, Simone Biles pulling out of the Olympics, and Naomi Osaka pulling out of you know, the Grand Slam tournaments. Like that happened right after I finished, but it was just like this is exactly why I wrote this book because you know, I think like not just generationally, I think like young people are kind of being asked to be like cogs in like capitalistic systems that already exist. And I know I'm getting like too heady for a book, especially if that's, you know, called K-pop Revolution, but like these were things I wanted to think about. And so like, yeah, it's, I think like young people kind of understand that like kind of listening to your personhood is not selfish. And maybe a lot of like older generations are actually learning that from us. So I wanted Candace to kind of like assert that, but then also she's often accused of being lazy or being entitled because she asserts that. But I just wanted to show that like, hey, the people who are asking for more recognition of their personhood are not slacking off. They're actually giving it their all. It's just that they're trying to assert themselves. So I really wanted to show that. And I do think it's a generational struggle in a lot of ways.
Definitely. I feel like with the anti-work movement and with
Yeah.
um, everything going on right now, like there is like a boomer, millennial, Gen Z kind of war. Um,
Yeah.
because like we don't really want to live the ways that our parents and our grandparents lived because
Mhm.
like we see the repercussions of that. And it doesn't mean that they weren't doing their best at the time, but like it's like
Exactly.
times have changed now and we don't have to do things the way you did. And it doesn't make us lazy. It just makes us
Yeah.
advocates for ourselves, you know?
Yeah, and I wanted to also, so like I don't know if this will really come across in the book, but there are millennials in the book. Like Manager Kong is a millennial, believe it or not.
Yes. Oh,
The CEO, the new CEO, Lena Sonu is a millennial. Her Candace's new bodyguard is a millennial. So like I just wanted to show that like they're like millennials are maybe caught in the middle. Some of them are siding with one side or and some of them are seeing both, and some of them are, you know, siding with others. So I just wanted to show that like it's all complicated. It's not all one thing and there's no one answer. That makes
exactly.
sense.
I I actually don't even know what I am. Like I guess I'm in that millennial like
Yeah.
area because I was born in 95. So a lot of like people cut me off there like and say like, oh, you're
Yeah.
a baby millennial or like, oh, you're an elder Gen
Oh
Z.
my gosh.
So
It's so
I
crazy that you're elder anything.
like I don't know how to identify myself, but I'm just like, I know I'm not, I don't know. I guess I
Yeah.
can kind of see both sides.
Yeah, for sure.
With all these changes happening,
Mhm.
and kind of this big push to bring K-pop to the West,
Mhm.
and do like trainee camps in the US and do
Yeah.
survival shows. I wanted to know like if you think we like how our systems might affect those
Mhm.
traditions or do you think there'll be like a push for change maybe like in how
Yeah.
harsh those systems might be?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely like just definitively like it needs to get better in terms of, you know, maybe the stakes shouldn't be so high, and like there definitely needs to be more conversation about mental health, which like so many K-pop idols have been amazing about, like really advocating for. BTS is amazing about it. So many, Eric Nam is amazing about it. Like there's so many great examples. Um, and as far as like things getting adapted to the West, so one thing that like I think, I mean, I can't speak for a whole culture, especially because I do consider myself more American, but like in all my research into Korea and like all the travels I've done, and interviews with you know, K-pop stars and, you know, the K-pop industry, like Korean people really want their culture to be shared. Um, and I think like the more of the issues of like appropriation, they definitely don't want to be mocked or like, you know, all that stuff, but like it's not quite as strong there as it is in America. Like their like culture is like a huge way for South Korea to be seen, you know, and it's a very valuable thing. So they really want to share it and they want people to experience it. They want like people of all backgrounds to be singing Korean choruses, whether or not they know exactly what they're singing. Like, you know, Korean people have been doing that for years with like wearing t-shirts where they didn't exactly know what the English says. But you know, it's all a part of like sharing, and Koreans by and large are just so into that. And I think it differentiates them from like some other countries that are like on the up, but like kind of want to not like hold on to their own identity just for themselves. But like Korea wants to be seen, and I think it's definitely working. And like there are so many great Korean values that actually do come out in K-pop and in dramas and stuff. And I think that's stuff that everyone's very excited about. So I think the spread, like, it should definitely continue, you know? That's the only spread of anything that's good right now, but like, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh my gosh. I want to pivot a little bit
Yeah.
and talk about like some tropes that you did because
Yeah.
I really loved do you pronounce her name Helena or Helena?
Helena.
Helena. Okay, I loved Helena and Candace's relationship in this
Hmm.
one. And there's like this big theme of like found family.
Yeah.
And I just really love that trope. I wanted to know like, are there like tropes? What are the tropes that you love the most? And do
Yeah.
you plan to include those in your future works?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I love friendships. Like friend drama too is really big for me. And I love the enemies to besties vibe. And we haven't talked about romance at all, but there is a lot more romance in this book than there was in the first one. But in a way, like the friendships are just like so much more interesting. And um, I was definitely inspired, especially in the first book, by like K-drama Mean Girls. There's this kind of like trope, and I wanted Helena to really, really embody that. Like even her look, having that like strawberry blonde hair, the half bangs, which are very big in K-dramas and kind sort of signal this is a mean girl. And but like I also love the trope of seeing that like, hey, like there were reasons that she was acting so crazy at the beginning. Um, and there was a lot more to her. So they have a lot more drama. It's not a smooth road for them in the second book either. It's actually even rockier, I would say, but there is like this true sisterhood there between them. And yeah, and like one of the reasons why I'm like so sure that her name is Helena is there's a very like big moment where it helps if you remember that Helena's Korean name is Herin, and that's where Helena comes from. And yeah, like she like they end up really, really leaning on each other a lot in this book.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And yeah, I think there was a lot more romance in this book. I love
Mhm.
Youngbae and Candace's relationship, and even her like kind of relationship with Wonjae. I won't like go into spoilers, but I
Yeah,
thought like just their dynamic was really interesting, and
yeah,
um, yeah, I wanted to know like how did you want to make it like a love triangle, or
yeah.
did it kind of come about organically?
I did. And actually there was a bit more of Candace and Wonjae in a few scenes that I ended up having to cut. But I wanted them to represent different things for her because Youngbae does have dreams of his own, but like he kind of represents for her kind of like a down to earth existence where like he's so just I always like I think I maybe referred to him as warm, like physically warm, like his hands are warm. When you hug him, he's warm. And that's like a very important thing to me in my actual life of like, you know, like what I want in a partner. It's just like physical warmth it is a big deal because it kind of represents like security, and that's who she is, who he is to her. But then 1J is like aspirational. And like I also feel that way too. Sometimes like my desire for like what's real in a relationship is kind of like you know, overcome by like the shiny new object, which is kind of like, I think, very human. And like Wonjae has like a lot going on himself underneath like the surface too. But like he's like almost an alien because like he does have that like perfection. But what as Candace gets more famous and also like more kind of like scrutinized, Wonjae becomes almost more comforting to her than Youngbae because like she's like, oh, a fellow alien, you know, because I'm becoming one too. I can't really relate to regular people. And also, what Candace is mad at Wonjae about at the beginning is his privilege, you know, because like he has this untouchability because he's already gotten to this point because he's a male star and also because he's gotten to this godlike status. And after a while, that becomes very attractive to her instead of repellent because it's just like the one thing that could save me from like all this drama I'm going through is Wonjae or being close to someone who's so untouchable. So she kind of goes back and forth in her mind between what kind of world she wants to live in because like the boys are, you know, they're characters in their own right, but they also are more like extensions of Candace's own journey.
I love that. And I also loved learning the nuances of Korean dating. I thought that is
Yeah.
there's a really funny scene in K-pop Revolution where they kind of planned out like her and Youngbae's dates, and I thought that was hilarious. And like their
Yeah.
anniversary gifts, and yeah.
Yeah, it kind of like goes back to that theme of like doing things for as a performance versus authenticity and how quickly those lines blur because like Candace does have feelings for Youngbae and they're like a cute couple and they do think some of the public stuff is fun, but at the same time it really plays with their heads. Because like yeah, there are all these like rules for like how to behave. And like I try to acknowledge this more in this book, but like anytime an adult tries to tell Candace, this is how Koreans behave, those are obviously always like big generalizations and usually kind of outdated because like, you know, people are kind of human everywhere, you know. So yeah, like so she kind of plays the game, but it definitely plays with her head too.
Oh yes, oh yes. I love that. Um, and also I didn't see this anywhere, but maybe you did mention this somewhere, but I was wondering if any of the characters were based off of like real K-pop stars. Because my friend who also read the first book, she said that like people were speculating that One J is based off of a Stray Kids member.
Oh, really? I
I
saw that too.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I think his name is Ji-sun. I don't
I
know much
saw
about
that
Stray
too.
Kids,
And I
but
was like, yeah, you know, I do like Stray Kids, but like I definitely was not thinking of one specific person. But I was definitely inspired by like, you know, what I do know about like specific K-pop stars' stories. Like, you know, Candace is definitely not based on Rosé of Blackpink, but like I was inspired by like kind of her musical style and also the fact that she's an English speaker who kind of like came into the group kind of last. Um, but yeah, sometimes like I do kind of visually think of certain people a little bit. Like all the characters in my head look like people who don't exist, but they look a little bit like combinations of people. Like for me, like 1J for instance looks like um V from BTS a little bit, but also mixed with like a bunch of other stars. But I would say like biographically, he has most in common with G Dragon actually. And then SLK definitely is not BTS because like SLK has one like main star in it, which is definitely not what BTS is about. Um, and then like for certain girls like Adam, I really think of like a version of Irene from like Red Velvet. And then for Wooey, definitely not personality, but just like visually, I kind of thought of IU in like a one of her long-haired versions of her of her looks. So I definitely like think of people just like I'm very inspired by K-pop stars. I'm obsessed with them, but like I definitely tried hard not to make anyone like based on anybody.
Yeah, I understand that. I in my head I kind of pictured 1J looking a little bit like EXO's Baekhyun. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and since she's just been like all over the place lately, I kind of pictured Helena looking like Gia from Singles Inferno.
Yes,
Which
yes,
is really funny.
totally, totally.
But
Yeah.
I feel like she has that like diva essence. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I thought of Helena appearance wise looking like a blonde version of Tiffany from
Oh
Girls'
yeah.
Generation, and like Rose put together.
Yes. Definitely I pictured Rose's kind of her, at least for Candace, like her lavender blonde hair that she did for
Yeah.
like in 2020 for most of that. So yeah, that's cool. But yeah, I want to know, this is also a fun question. Like, what's just the most surprising K-pop fact or Korea fact that you found out while you were doing research?
Ooh, this
And
is
did you include it in the
fun.
book?
Yeah, let me think. I'm sure there's so many, but I just like didn't really um I would say, ooh, so, oh gosh, like I loved all this writing all like the music show scenes. And I definitely fictionalized it, but like I loved learning about all the rules of each music show because like, for people who don't really know, music shows in Korea are kind of just like I don't know what the equivalent would be. I don't think we have one anymore. It's kind
Kind
of
of like
like Total Request
MTV.
Live.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
what it used to be, except it's more like there's kind of a competition element and there are like lots of live performances and but they're like debuts all the time. So yeah, but then when a big group comes in, like they might do a bunch of them. In the book, the group does all 6 music shows, which I don't think many groups really do, but especially all in one week. But I had to make it extra for the book. But I loved learning all those customs and how that works. And I also liked really exploring different identities in this book, which I didn't really have much of an opportunity to do with the first book because they were all just kind of locked in a building the whole time in the first book. In the second book, I definitely wanted to explore, um, Black Koreans living in Korea and kind of uh, what they experience. And I definitely did a lot of research and some interviews there because I wanted to treat it really sensitively and like just all the conflicts that there can be and like from individuals I talked to, a lot of people who are, who have one Black and one East Asian parent, go through a lot, but actually it's like, it's kind of assumed that it would be like so horrible and difficult in Korea just because there isn't that much diversity at all. And there's definitely stuff that you have to deal with, but like, by and large, like I heard like, yes, it makes me definitely really different, but like that can also be good and bad. So again, good and bad. But I really enjoyed exploring that a bit because there's a character named Yoonju who has a Black parent and an Asian parent, and owns it, but also has to struggle with it. So yeah.
Yeah, I thought you did handle it sensitively. Everything around Yuju and Summer. I thought that was really cool and really interesting. But yeah, and just the idea of having like an anti-idol group, which
Yeah.
is really cool. I hope we see something like that, like in real life at some point. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of around the corner because like the thing about like kind of like exploding idol stereotypes is like I I don't think the goal should be to like kind of upturn what people love about K-pop, which is that it does feel really like Korean and identity, but there's so many ways to expand that, but not every group has to do it. So like I think one of Candace's struggles is that her group, the girls, actually kind of turns out a little bit looking kind of like a lot of other girl groups. But there's still a lot that she can do with that platform and that identity, which is also because she is so mainstream, she can lift others up. Because sometimes I think maybe the reason we haven't seen that is just that they're not at the big companies. But if like some of the big companies like really uplifted a group that really defied every stereotype, that would be fill a really great need. So yeah, like I definitely wanted to like maybe kind of pie in the sky, like just show that like, hey, like this diversity can be really cool while also keeping a Korean identity, because Korean identity is expanding so much. Like it doesn't look any one way anymore. So but yeah, like we can have mainstream groups, we can have all sorts of different groups, and I think that's really exciting.
Exactly. I loved all the representation in K-pop Revolution. Specifically, I thought you like brought in people from different nationalities and
Mhm.
countries and sexualities. And yeah, I hope to see like art reflect life soon. I think that'd
Yeah,
be so cool. Do you want to do kind of
yeah,
like a speed round of
yeah,
like fun
for sure,
questions?
for sure.
So if you were in a group, would
Uh-huh.
you would
Yeah.
you want to be like, for people who don't know, usually everyone in a group has a role. So you can be the maknae, which is like the youngest, the
Mhm.
visual, who is the most attractive, the main dancer, main singer, or main rapper. So
Yeah.
which one would you want to be, Stefan?
Okay, so I've always been kind of like in my family the youngest, so I would want to be the maknae, and I feel
Yeah.
like maknaes just have more fun, and they can usually be kind of like the more outspoken ones if they want. And I don't know, I like being like kind of babied by people who are a little older than me. So yeah, that's why I also made Candace the maknae. She's such a maknae.
I feel like I'd have trouble being ordered around though, and
Yes.
like constantly like doing the honorifics, I guess.
Yes, and that's a big thing in K-pop groups usually. Like, yeah, like the youngest definitely gets treated like the youngest all the
Yeah.
time.
But like you said, that could be a nice thing, like being coddled a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And who are your biases? You can name as many or as few as you want. I know you mentioned BTS, so I have to know.
Yes, I love BTS. Oh gosh. My within BTS, my ultimate bias is probably RM.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that like I just love that he's such like a visionary, and like um even though he's like the middle oldest, he just seems like kind of the oldest, and like I just like if I were in a group with him, I'd just be like, what should I do next? I would like yeah, so he's probably my
Same.
BTS bias for sure. And then Rose is always going to have a big place in my heart. And I've also always loved Dahyun from Twice. I just think she's really
Um,
fun, and like her hair color, she was purple for a while. So, and like I think that's like kind of where I got some of my inspiration for Candace. And like when I first started writing K-pop Confidential, like Candace, like her face morphed in my head, but when I started out, she looked a lot like
oh
Taehyun.
wow. Yeah, I need to learn more about Twice. They're a group
They're
I
so
just
cool.
haven't
Yeah.
gotten super into yet. Yeah. Um, are there any, who was the first K-pop group you were obsessed with? Or first song that you were
Um,
obsessed with?
I have to say, like when K-pop was not a big thing for me in my life when I was like much younger, or even a teenager. I kind of got into 21. They were my first intro group, and I was just like, okay, this I can get really into. So I think they will always have like a place in my heart because they were kind of like the big group when I first got into K-pop around 2014-ish.
Mhm.
So they'll always be it for me.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're like original girl crush.
Yes, exactly.
Are there any like songs that you're loving right now? It can be a K-pop song or just like a
Hmm.
Western song or any group that you're obsessed with right now or video that you
Yeah.
can't stop watching.
Oh gosh. So I'm really loving aespa.
Yeah.
I think they're really coming up, and like um so many people had so many opinions about their debut, and like
Yes.
I kind like definitely didn't base anything from the girls on them, but like just seeing like a giant debut from a main company in 2021, I was like, okay, this is how it's done now, you know? So that was really fascinating. And
They
I
seem
also
to have that
just,
same like pressure
yes,
as
yes.
Espa.
Yeah, they're just gonna like kill, like they need to kill right out the gate.
Exactly.
But I'm really loving them, and I feel like they're really finding their identity in a really cool way. But I'm also just like generally obsessed with female stars, like
Yeah.
in general. Like I'm having a Britney renaissance for sure. And like definitely talking about like the pressure put on idols. Like Britney is the ultimate idol in that respect in so many ways. I love Ariana Grande. I love Doja Cat songs. Oh my
I like
gosh.
just got obsessed with Doja Cat songs. So good.
Yeah, I
They're so
love,
addictive.
they're so addictive. I love Cardi. I love her personality. I love that she was on Blackpink's album. So
Yes. Oh my gosh, I
yeah.
totally forgot about that. I
Yeah.
do like that song though.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't wait for them to go on tour. Hopefully,
Yes.
sometime soon.
Mm.
Ugh. And what was your last like 5-star read or any books that you just
Ooh.
have loved lately?
Oh my gosh. So I read so many books in 2021. So and I loved almost all of them. The thing about books is like almost every one that I pick up and choose to read, I will love because I usually like try to commit before I start. But oh gosh, what did I read Crying in H Mart
Oh, I
by
saw
Michelle
that.
Zauner. It's
Yeah.
so good. She's incredible.
It won a
Um,
lot of awards, right?
yes,
Like, I feel like I
yes.
keep hearing about it.
Yeah, it's a huge bestseller too. I read Skin Shit by Yoon Choi. It's a collection of short stories. It's so, so, so good. I love anything by my YA friends, Debbie Rigo. Um, Simone Breaks All the Rules. It's amazing. Haitian American Pride. And anything by Jessica Goodman. They'll Never Catch Us. It's amazing. Um, what else? Oh, Emma Lord, love her always. When You Get the Chance is her best book yet. It's so, so good. And it got a lot of attention on social media, just one aspect of it, because the dad in the book has a live journal or had a live journal in the past. And I'm like, oh my God, I had a live journal in high school. Now am I dad age? But, like, um, so yeah, like there's so much good that's always coming out. You can never keep up. But like one of my guilty pleasures that I'm not actually guilty about is just like true crime books. I read like a million of those all the time.
Ooh,
Yeah.
who's your favorite true crime writer?
Oh gosh, like to me, I don't follow true crime writers as much as like cases.
Mm.
I will read anything about the Manson murders.
Mm.
I can't help myself. I will read. Oh, I read this amazing one. I don't remember the name of the author, but it was called Last Call, and it was about like murders and like the gay community in New York City that like I had never heard of. And it was just like I don't know. I don't like scary movies, but like
Me either.
I feel like true crime is my horror movie. It's like this is so scary. Yet I'm like it weirdly like entertain like calm. I don't know. It's so weird. It's just like these are horrible, scary stories.
It's kind of a
But
manual of what not to do also. So
exactly. And like, I'm just like, oh my God, like, I can't believe people ever hitchhiked.
oh my gosh, that's like my worst nightmare.
I
Oh my
know.
God. Like hitchhiking or letting someone, like a
I
stranger, into my
know.
car.
I know. And I'm such a high anxiety person. I think it's a weird thing where like high anxiety people like look for stories that are actually high anxiety in a way that like
It
if
counteracts
it's too
it.
chill, it's not even going to affect you. It needs to be also just like,
Just a little anxiety, just a
yeah.
little. And yeah, I just wanted to know, since like I'm a writer too, do you have any advice for writers or any writing resources, craft books that you recommend?
Oh gosh.
Because I feel like your plotting is like really tight. So
Oh, thank
I
you.
need like to breathe your air or something.
No, that's so nice of you to say because like I'm working on this adult novel that I've been working on my entire adult life that like is so character based, but like I actually do start with character always. So and let that kind of form the plot because like um if you think about it, the plot really does follow my main character's like inner arc. Like even like all the corporate intrigue is really just like about how she plays a part in it. So I'd say definitely start with the character. And also, and this is something I always forget. Like, I think this will be something I forget till the end of time. I'm even forgetting it as we speak. And I'm probably about to start writing again right after this. But like, always just be very forgiving of yourself. Let yourself write bad stuff. And always just get started. That's the thing, because like getting started is so hard because like you're kind of like starting from nowhere and you're just like, oh my God, there's somewhere where so many places to go. And I think that's what froze me a lot for the second book is because I was just like, oh my gosh, like I was so in the trainee world and I'm like, I really researched that, but now like having the girls out in the whole world is like a whole other thing. Like, how do I write that? How do I put that in her voice? And it just felt so daunting. But then once I started writing in her voice, I was just like, oh, it's all funneled through her. So like it's all manageable, you know, it didn't need to be this scary thing that I put off for months and months. So I would just say get started. And then like in line with that, like people always talk about rituals. And what I think that's all about is like just do whatever you can to make yourself happy while you're writing because like people I think there's this like misconception that you need to be kind of tortured or your best writing happens when you're feeling really like heated about something. But like I do think that like emotions are very important in writing, and it's important to have an emotional life, but you don't necessarily have to be living that as you're writing. So definitely never do anything to like put extra turmoil in your life to make you a better writer because it'll find you no matter what. But while you're writing, just try to be like at peace, be happy, be comfortable. Even when you're writing like really upsetting things or like something that's difficult, like feeling happy will give you that energy and like will actually make it better because like what I find really bad is when you're actually angry while you're writing. Like yes, like angry books are very important. A lot of K-pop revolution is angry, but like it's bad when you personally are angry while you're writing because you kind of get fixated on things. You probably say things that like um no one else cares about as much just because it's so personal. It's just like kind of anger is so like selfish, you know. Yeah, like definitely whatever your ritual is, there's no good or right one. I think it all depends on like what's making you feel good, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I really love that advice. Oh, thank you. And just so I'm honoring our time, I'll
Yeah.
stop there. But do you have any anything you want to announce or what you're writing next or anything you want to plug before we
Well,
leave?
yeah. Well, I'm working on my um my first adult book.
Exciting.
And that's going to have nothing to do with K-pop. It's actually, but it actually is from the point of view of a teen boy, but he's living in Atlanta, Georgia, and going to a prep school. And his
It's
family's
already very relatable.
yes, he's in Georgia, prep school, family falling apart. And it takes place in 2004. So the time is very different. And questions of representation were very, very different back then. I hope to announce a very cool thing about the K-pop books coming forward. And
I might have a speculation about that.
yes. And then I have like my publisher doesn't really know this, but like but feel free to tell other people or tell your audience. But like I have an idea for a third K-pop book. With Candace. I also have like ideas for books that are in the world but aren't about Candace, maybe like some of the SLK members, because I drop a huge bomb about them in the second book. Want to explore
I know
that?
exactly what you're talking
about. Which I think is very realistic, to be honest. And then the third book would be about Candace and her group trying to make it in America and actually moving to Hollywood.
Ooh, I love everything I'm hearing. I'm so excited for you, excited for your future work. Like, wow.
Oh my